I only offered her soup because she looked like she was about 3 seconds away from dying on my docking platform, not because I wanted to accidentally propose marriage to an alien princess. At the time, though, I didn't know she was a princess. All I knew was that something large, smoking, and very expensive looking was tumbling toward my repair station like a drunk meteor. Outpost K-47 wasn't exactly a busy hub. We fixed cargo haulers, patched smugglers who paid in untraceable credits, and occasionally argued with supply drones that insisted we didn't need oxygen filters this quarter. Excitement usually meant the coffee machine produced something that didn't taste like melted wiring. So when my sensors screamed about an unidentified vessel losing life support, I did what any responsible mechanic would do. I sighed loudly, grabbed my toolkit and muttered, "Great. Paperwork." The ship itself was wrong. Not damaged wrong, biology textbook wrong. Smooth curves like bone. Veins of dim blue light pulsing beneath a pearlescent surface. No visible thrusters. No seams. "Organic hull?" I whispered. "Who builds a spaceship that can probably get sick?" The station AI suggested I wait for authorities. Authorities were 4 hours away. The ship had maybe 10 minutes. I overrode docking protocol. Because that's the problem with humans. We see something in trouble and our brains don't ask, "Is this wise?" They ask, "Can we help?" The vessel collapsed into the docking clamps with a sound halfway between metal grinding and a creature exhaling its last breath. Emergency foam leaked from fractures, hardening like frost. I cut through the hatch expecting pirates, monsters, or something with too many teeth. Instead, I found her. She was sprawled across the chamber floor, long limbs tangled in strands of dimming bioluminescent cables. Her skin shimmered faintly, not glowing exactly, more like starlight caught under clear water. Silver markings traced down her arms in elegant spirals. Even unconscious, she somehow looked dignified, which made the puddle of coolant under her slightly less dignified. "Okay," I said slowly, kneeling beside her. "Good news, you are definitely not a pirate." Her eyes fluttered open. They were bright violet. Not purple. Not blue. Violet, like the universe had opinions about color palettes. She tried to speak. What came out sounded ceremonial, and completely incomprehensible. "Yeah, I don't speak, whatever that is," I said. "Hold on." Her skin was cold. Pulse faint. Whatever atmosphere her species preferred, it wasn't leaking into the room fast enough. I lifted her, lighter than expected, and carried her toward the station med bay. She tensed slightly, then relaxed, her hand gripping my sleeve with surprising strength. "It's okay," I muttered. "You crash, I fix. That's the deal around here." The translator implant hummed as it struggled to map her language. By the time we reached the med unit, it finally produced something intelligible. "You carry me, without fear." "Well," I said, setting her down, "fear is more of a later emotion. Usually after the bill." The scanner confirmed dehydration and metabolic collapse. Which is how, 10 minutes later, I found myself staring at the emergency food locker. The med gel wouldn't stabilize her quickly enough. She needed nutrients. Unfortunately, the most universally tolerated organic recovery meal we stocked was chicken soup. I heated it, poured it into a thermal bowl, and helped her sit upright. "All right," I said. "I have no idea if your species eats poultry, but statistically speaking, soup fixes everything." She watched me with intense concentration, like I was performing sacred geometry instead of blowing gently on broth. I held the spoon toward her. She froze. Slowly, very slowly, she pushed herself off the bed. Then she knelt. Actually knelt. One hand pressed over her chest, head bowed. The translator chimed. "Before the endless night, you offer nourishment from your own hands. Your soul is generous beyond measure." I blinked. You're welcome?" She accepted the spoon with reverence. Took a sip. Closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought maybe it was poison to her species and I just committed diplomatic manslaughter. Then she spoke again. On my world, this act binds two lives. To feed another is to declare them one's chosen. I laughed. Out loud. A full, relieved, slightly hysterical laugh. Oh no. No, no. This is just soup. People give this to strangers. Co-workers. People with colds. One time I gave some to a vending machine repair guy. She studied me. Completely serious. You honor me beyond tradition. That is not what's happening. She placed her luminous hand over mine. Warm now. Steady. I accept your proposal. My brain stopped. My what? The station lights dimmed suddenly. Not a power failure. A shadow. Then another. I turned toward the observation port. The stars were disappearing. One by one. Blocked by enormous silhouettes sliding silently into formation. Ships. Dozens. No, hundreds. Each bearing the same flowing architecture as hers, glowing with regal patterns that made my repair station look like a forgotten toolbox. A transmission burst across every frequency. The translator didn't even hesitate. Royal fleet of the Luminari has arrived to witness the sacred union. Prepare ceremonial reception. I stared at her. She gave a small, radiant smile. My people are punctual. My mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I gave you chicken soup. You offered life. She replied softly. Outside, the largest ship rotated, revealing markings that even an idiot mechanic could recognize as important. Extremely important. I looked back at her. Then at the fleet. Then at the half-empty soup bowl still in her hands. I don't suppose, I said weakly, there's a cultural loophole for broth? She tilted her head. I do not understand. Sirens began wailing across the station as every incoming channel lit up. Dockmasters shouting. Security panicking. Someone screaming about royal clearance codes. And me? I came to one slow, horrifying realization. I hadn't just helped a crash survivor. I had accidentally proposed to alien royalty. And judging by the armada currently blocking out the sun, they were very excited about the wedding. The first official message addressed me as Honored Royal Consort. I assumed it was a translation error. It was not. Within minutes of the fleet's arrival, my quiet repair station transformed into the most oversecured piece of metal in this quadrant. Docking lanes were locked. Navigation froze. Even the coffee machine refused to dispense anything without ceremonial authorization, which felt excessive but somehow on brand for the day I was apparently getting married by accident. I stood in the corridor outside the med bay while three beings in shimmering armor scanned me with devices that hummed at pitches I could feel in my teeth. One of them inclined their head. Genetic stability, acceptable. Skeletal symmetry, admirable. Emotional impulse toward altruism, exceptional. I rubbed my face. I once cried because a cargo drone ran over a pigeon. The armored figure turned slightly toward the princess. A display of empathy. Fortunate genetics. Please stop evaluating my skeleton, I muttered. She stepped forward then, no longer looking fragile or half-conscious. Cleaned and wrapped in something that flowed like liquid moonlight, she carried herself with effortless authority. Yet when her gaze landed on me, the severity softened. You appear distressed, she said. Do I? Is it the pacing? Or the muttering? Or the fact that your extended family just parked a small galaxy outside my workplace? They are not extended, she replied calmly. Only the first ceremonial wave. The first. I stopped myself. Deep breathing. Oxygen was important. Princess, I said carefully, we need to discuss the soup. She nodded as if I'd proposed a philosophy symposium. The gesture was deeply intimate. You may speak freely. On Earth, I began. Soup is casual. Her brow furrowed. I pressed on. People give it to acquaintances. Neighbors. Sometimes people we don't even like that much. She looked genuinely startled. You form soul bonds indiscriminately? No. That's exactly my point. We don't form soul bonds over soup. She considered this for a long moment, then said something in her own language that made the armored attendants stiffen in what looked suspiciously like scandal. The translator chimed. Your culture is recklessly romantic. I choked. We are not the reckless ones here. She paced slowly, hands folded behind her back. My species does not give nourishment lightly. To sustain another with one's own offering is to declare, your life is now intertwined with mine. It is among the oldest vows we possess. Well, on my world, the oldest vow is I promise not to eat your fries, and people break that constantly. A faint smile touched her lips. Progress, I thought. So, I said quickly, hopeful. Now that we understand the misunderstanding, we can probably just clear this up with your fleet? She tilted her head. Clear it? Yes. Cancel the wedding? Unsummon the armada. Everyone goes home. I go back to arguing with air filters. Before she could respond, another transmission echoed through the station, richer, more resonant. Ceremonial timeline confirmed. Union to occur in 3 rotations. 3 days. 3 days. I don't even own formal clothes. I whispered. You will not require them, she said gently. On my world, we stand barefoot when we vow eternity. It reminds us that love is not armor. That was unexpectedly poetic. Dangerously poetic. I shook it off. No. No eternity. No vows. Look. I grabbed a sealed cup of instant noodles from a supply crate and shoved it into her hands. This is also soup. Observe. I waved down a passing engineer. Hey, Patel! Catch. He did. I pointed dramatically. Patel, I am offering you soup. Are we married now? Patel blinked between us. Should I call HR? See? I said triumphantly. The princess watched the exchange with intense fascination. You have proposed twice within a minute, she said quietly. Your confidence is formidable. That is not confidence, that is desperation. She stepped closer, studying my face as though trying to solve a complex equation. Why resist what fate has woven? Because fate never asked if I was busy. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then she spoke more softly. When your arms carried me from the wreck, they trembled. I frowned. Adrenaline. Yet you did not release me. Even when your strength faltered. No one had ever described me like that before. Most people described me as competent, or occasionally useful. Never necessary. Her gaze held mine. My title draws obedience, she continued. But you acted without knowing who I was. Without expectation of reward. Heat crept into my face. Well, that's just being human. Then humanity is rarer than our astronomers believed. The words landed somewhere deep and uncomfortable, the place I usually ignored by fixing things. I cleared my throat. Look, Princess. Elira, she corrected gently. Elira. I'm not exactly royal material. I live above a maintenance bay. My idea of luxury is fresh socks. She glanced around the station, the exposed wiring, the dented panels. I find honesty luxurious. That did not help my emotional stability. A pause settled between us, quieter now. Less frantic. More aware. Are you afraid of me? She asked suddenly. No, I admitted after a moment. I'm afraid of ruining something I don't understand. Her expression softened in a way that made my chest feel oddly tight. Before I could analyze that extremely inconvenient sensation, the station AI announced. Attention, royal proclamation incoming. A holographic sigil blossomed in the air, elegant, unmistakably important. The voice that followed carried the weight of centuries. Let it be known that Princess Elira, bearer of the Dawn lineage, has chosen her bonded. Preparations commence immediately. The union shall be witnessed across the Luminari territories. I stared at her. Across, how many territories? She thought briefly. 9,000 inhabited systems. My knees nearly gave out. You're televising my panic to 9,000 planets? It is considered uplifting. I dragged a hand down my face. This all started because I was trying to be nice. She stepped closer then, close enough that the faint glow of her skin brushed the edges of my vision. And that, she said quietly, is precisely why I chose you. My brain snagged on the phrasing. Chose? Color shifted subtly along the markings on her arms, warmer now. Do not mistake tradition for absence of desire, she said. I could have invoked rescue protocols and waited for my fleet. Why didn't you? Her eyes held mine. Because when I saw you running toward a burning vessel, I hoped you would be the one. That was not a sentence my heart was prepared to process. Somewhere down the corridor, workers scrambled, hauling decorations I definitely had not approved. Fabric made of light draped across bulkheads. Floral shapes drifted through controlled gravity like glowing snow. 3 days. Wedding. Broadcast. Princess. I exhaled slowly. I really should have just offered water. She smiled, small, but unmistakably amused. In our culture, water is a declaration of friendship. Fantastic, I muttered. Next time I'll throw you a towel and run away. You would not, she said with calm certainty. And the worst part? She was absolutely right. The morning of the first trial arrived like an avalanche I didn't see coming. I woke to the sound of alarms synchronized to something far beyond any human tempo, lights flickering in ceremonial patterns, and the faint hum of hundreds of ships orbiting my repair station. Somehow, I had become the center of a galaxy-wide event, and nothing in my training as a mechanic had prepared me for interstellar diplomacy, let alone being the proposed consort of a royal alien species. Elira was already waiting, radiance perfectly calm, her expression serene. She gestured toward the hall where the trials would take place. I followed, trying not to trip over my own shoes, which now seemed absurdly inadequate for anything resembling a wedding or sacred test. The corridor was lined with her attendants, all shimmering and glowing in ways that made fluorescent lights feel lazy. I felt like a lone toaster wandering into an art museum. The first trial, she explained, was the feast. Not just eating, mind you, but proving my capacity to endure alien cuisine designed to reveal character, resilience, and, apparently, emotional stability. The table before us was enormous and floating, the dishes arranged like constellations. Some seemed to hover. Others hissed faintly, releasing aromas that made my stomach both curious and nervous. One dish pulsed like it had a heartbeat of its own. You must consume without hesitation, Elira said calmly. Your reactions will be observed. I stared. Observed by who? The council. And me. I took a deep breath. Then another. Then dove in. The first bite of something that looked like translucent noodles shimmered in response to my nervousness, changing color with my hesitation. I chewed carefully, aware that each bite was a test, each swallow a performance. Somehow, my trembling hands and racing heartbeat only made the dishes glow brighter. Elira watched quietly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She clearly found my panic fascinating. I tried to steady myself, telling my stomach, this is just like fixing a hyperdrive, except everything is alive and judging you. My forehead was damp, my throat dry, but somehow I made it through, nodding toward her to signal success. She inclined her head, impressed. The second trial was subtler, and infinitely more terrifying. The truth chamber. The room itself emitted a soft blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the questions it would ask. The chamber forced honesty, she said, a place where pretense would not survive. As soon as I stepped inside, a warmth spread across my chest, and I realized I could not lie if I tried. You fear inadequacy, a voice intoned softly. Yes, I admitted. My voice sounded absurdly loud to my own ears. You have never felt worthy of love. Yes, I admitted again. You are frightened of commitment. Terrified, I said, almost gasping. Elira was silent, letting me speak without comment. Somehow, sharing these flaws aloud was liberating. No judgment. No ridicule. Just quiet acknowledgement. Your honesty is remarkable, she said finally, voice gentle. Few of my people are capable of this. Few humans either. I laughed nervously. Well, I fix things for a living. Usually machines. People, they're more complicated. They are, she admitted. And yet here you stand. Honest. Vulnerable. Human. It was a compliment wrapped in a truth I had not expected to hear from someone who could bend galaxies with a gesture. It made my chest tighten. The third trial was more physical, though not in the combat sense I had feared. It was called the choice. I was given an option to leave. No penalties, no shame, just an escape. The station doors hovered open to let me go. My instincts screamed, run. But I looked at Elira. She stood there, calm but radiant, the light of her people reflecting off her skin. And something in me clicked. Running felt like losing a part of myself I hadn't realized I wanted. I stay, I said. No hesitation. No excuses. Just the simple truth. Her eyes softened, and a faint blush spread across her markings. Then you are ready, she said. Ready not because duty demands it, but because your choice is yours. I blinked, realizing I was not just fulfilling some ceremonial requirement. I was choosing to engage in something real. Something beyond obligation, beyond soup, beyond misunderstandings. And that thought terrified me in the best way. Later, while we prepared for the ceremonial recognition by her fleet, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflective panel of a ship. My hands were still greasy from repairs, my uniform wrinkled, and I smelled faintly of engine oil and instant noodles. Elira approached, standing beside me without a word. She extended her hand, and when I took it, the warmth spread through me like sunlight through a cold station. You have passed the trials, she whispered. Not because you are flawless, but because you are human. Because you are honest, kind, and courageous in ways many of my people would envy. My face heated. I tried to deflect. You're just saying that because you're polite. I do not flatter lightly, she said. Your flaws, your fear, your perseverance, they are beautiful. And they are yours. Somewhere between pride and panic, I realized that my life had irrevocably shifted. I, a simple mechanic, had gone from offering soup to becoming the chosen consort of a galactic princess. And the absurdity of it all, the comedy, the chaos, did not diminish the weight of her words. The royal fleet waited outside, their presence looming like stars too close. The ceremony was imminent. But in that moment, standing barefoot on the polished floor of my repair station with Elira at my side, I understood something fundamental. Being human, flawed, anxious, bumbling human, had brought me here. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I exhaled slowly, bracing myself for whatever came next. The trials were over. The choice was made. And somehow, through all the panic, the miscommunication, and the impossible stakes, I felt a strange, exhilarating certainty. I belonged here. And for the first time in my life, it was because of who I was, not what I could fix, not what I could build, not the soup I accidentally served. Elira squeezed my hand. Come, she said, motioning toward the ceremonial hall. Your people and mine are waiting. I followed, heart pounding, mind spinning, ready or not. The ceremonial hall was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Light floated in ribbons, drifting across the polished floor as if gravity itself had decided to take the day off. Ships hovered just outside the reinforced windows, their silhouettes casting shifting shadows that made the entire room feel like it existed somewhere between reality and a dream. For a moment, I considered running, ducking back into the repair bay, pretending the last 3 days had been a fever dream fueled by too much coffee and engine grease. But then Elira stepped beside me, her calm presence anchoring the chaos, and I realized there was no turning back. The assembly of her people was vast. Tall, luminescent figures with eyes that seemed to reflect entire constellations filled the room. Their gazes were intent, expectant, and somehow disconcertingly polite. They weren't hostile, but the weight of their attention made me hyper-aware of every misstep, every nervous twitch. I glanced at Elira, who simply smiled and extended a hand toward the floating dais. She radiated serenity, as though she had done this 1,000 times before. Even though I knew the exact opposite was true, this was unprecedented. The officiator, a being who looked like a flowing combination of crystal and liquid light, hovered forward. Its voice resonated through the hall, low and melodic. "The sacred union shall commence. The chosen may declare their intent." Intent. That word was heavy. I swallowed and realized I had to speak for myself, not for anyone else. This was my moment, my choice, and for once, I couldn't hide behind accidental soup or misinterpreted gestures. I cleared my throat. "Wait." The entire hall froze, not hostile, just surprised. Even the hovering crystal being tilted slightly, curious. I glanced at Elira. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Encouraging silence. "This," I said, gesturing between us. "All of this, the ships, the rituals, the speeches, started because I gave someone soup. And I think we both know that soup, by itself, is not a legally binding agreement." A ripple of confusion went through the assembly, though no one challenged me. They were listening, waiting. Elira's violet eyes softened, and she took a step closer. "Speak plainly, human." I swallowed again. "Plainly. I want this, but I want it because I choose it, not because of tradition, or obligation, or a misunderstanding about chicken broth. I want it because, well, because you are incredible, and somehow, in the middle of chaos and lasers and glowing people, I realized I don't want to run." A faint glow coursed through her markings, brighter than ever. The audience leaned in subtly, sensing something monumental. She smiled, small but real, and extended her hand. "And I choose you," she said. "Not for ceremony, not for fleet, not for tradition. For you. For your humanity." For a moment, the entire universe seemed to pause. The lights dimmed, ships hovered silently outside, and even the floating crystal officiator seemed to wait. Then, slowly, the atmosphere shifted. The tension melted into something lighter, laughter rippling softly through the assembly, like wind over distant mountains. The practical human in me panicked. Do we hug? Shake hands? Or?" Elira chuckled. Not loud, just a melodic ripple that sent warmth through me. "We proceed as humans do," she said. "Though customs may be adapted." I followed her lead, awkwardly taking her hand in mine, feeling a spark that wasn't entirely metaphorical. The hall exhaled with us, an unseen acknowledgement that the chaos of 3 days, the trials, the fleet, and yes, the soup, had led to this honest, unforced moment. Even after the ceremony technically concluded, the humor of it all lingered. I looked around at the attendants still standing stiffly and realized their version of decorum included floating flowers, hovering light ribbons, and an occasional telepathic comment about my peculiar fashion choices. I tried not to laugh out loud. Elira leaned close, voice soft. "Are you frightened?" "Terrified," I admitted, and she smiled, pressing her glowing hand to mine. "But happy," I added. "Yes," she said. "That is how it should feel." Afterward, we were led through the station, where workers had somehow converted the docking bay into a celebratory feast. Humans and aliens mingled awkwardly, exchanging customs, food, and laughter. I realized my absurd little life had become the nucleus of interstellar diplomacy, romance, and comedy, all at once. At one point, the Royal Admiral leaned close and whispered something in her language, which the translator interpreted. "Population projections now extremely promising." I nearly choked. "Extremely promising?" Elira smirked faintly. "We may begin with something less ambitious, like dinner." I laughed. Relief, disbelief, and excitement all tangled together. "That's probably smart," I said. "Soup optional?" "Optional," she confirmed, and the warmth in her gaze made me feel both lucky and completely unprepared for what came next. As the night wore on, I realized that being human, flawed, anxious, awkwardly brave, had somehow won the respect of an entire alien civilization. But more importantly, it had won the heart of someone remarkable, someone luminous in every sense. That night, I understood what HFY really meant. The small, often clumsy acts of kindness we take for granted can ripple across worlds, shaping destinies we never imagined. And somewhere, between laughter, light, and floating foods that refused gravity, I made a silent vow: I would never underestimate the power of being kind again. I glanced at Elira, still smiling, still glowing, still completely out of this universe's league. Next time, I muttered under my breath, I'm offering water instead of soup. She tilted her head, violet eyes twinkling like distant stars. And maybe that will be enough, she said softly. For the first time in my life, I didn't doubt it.